7, 10. Okay. And then we are going to wait for this YouTube live stream to go up. All right, we are live on YouTube and ready to go.
Great, thank you very much. It is 10:35 a.m. and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Auditing Committee of Thursday, August 25th, 2022. And before we begin, please note this meeting is live streamed on YouTube and recorded. Members of the public are encouraged to watch or listen to the meeting online or by dialing into 415-569-6446 for the audio of this meeting. If you would like to provide public comment at today's meeting and you have not done so already, please call 415-569-6446 and let the facilitator know what items you would like to speak on today. And Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Thank you. We're going to start with Director Cochran.
Here.
Director Giudice.
Here.
Director Grosball. Director Grosball is not online. Director Hernandez.
Here.
Director Maston.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Parr.
Present.
Chair Rabbit.
Here.
And President Theriault.
Here.
Thank you. Also on the line, I see we have Director Garbarino. Are you there?
I am.
There you go. I can see the screens now. Director Hill is also on the line. Director Rodoni, Director Snyder, and Director Thier. Thank you. You are a committee of the whole and you have a quorum. I'm going to confirm Dennis Mulligan still on the line.
Present.
Joe Wire.
Yes.
Eva Bauer-Furbish.
Present.
Kim Enolius.
Hi.
Madeline Chun.
Yes.
Dave Rivera.
Good morning, President.
Mona Babauta.
Present.
And Jim Swindler is not with us. And Kelly Hopper.
Present.
Thank you. And we, of course, we have our PFM representative, Wale. Welcome. And that confirms staff on the line.
Great, thank you very much. I am also obligated to remind everyone to mute their microphones until after the staff's presentations, and remember to unmute when we open it up for directors' discussion. If we have directors joining us by phone, please use your mute button or *6 to unmute yourself as after staff's presentation. Be asking for any questions or comments on the item. Click on the raised hand function on the device if you have questions, or press *9 if joining by phone. If there are any questions, the secretary or I will call on you accordingly. If we missed your raised hand, please speak up. After our discussion, we will ask for any public comment before moving on, and please follow along by referring to the page numbers located on the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. With that, Madam Secretary, can you please introduce the first item?
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. Item number 3 is the ratification of previous actions by the Auditor Controller, and that package of commitments, ratification, investments before you. And on page 5, Wale is here to join us and go over today's PFM investment report for July 2022. And that begins on page 9. Wale, I'm going to turn things over to you to start your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone that's on the committee. We will be going over the July 2022 investment report. And we'll start on page 10. So between June and July, we did see again an increase in yields, most of that on the upper end of on the shorter end of the curve, excuse me, the mid and anywhere between the 3 and the 5 year, we did see yields come down in that range. Again, yields continue to climb as the market is anticipating that the Fed will continue to raise rates as long as inflation remains rampant. The good news is that the CPI number that was printed previously came down from 9.1 to 8.5%, which is a good sign. Doesn't necessarily mean we're out of the woods, but it is something that people are keeping an eye on to see if inflation is peaking. Now, if we move down to page 11, what we see here is that the initial trajectory back in June of 2022 of the Fed funds rate has come down a bit lower as of last month. So here we're seeing that the market is pricing that the Fed may not have to raise rates as aggressively as they anticipated going into next year. If we're getting signals that inflation is starting to cool. Now, the Fed has mentioned that they're not really giving forecasts, but they're really going to be data dependent on a month-to-month basis on deciding what that trajectory of the Fed's funds rate will be. If we move down to page 13, this is the GDP number that we are looking at quarter over quarter. So again, the last 2 quarters, we did get negative GDP. In the first quarter was down 1.6%, and in the second quarter was down 0.9%. So because of these 2 consecutive quarters of contraction when it comes to growth, people are anticipating that we could be in a technical recession. We haven't seen any announcement labeling this a full-blown recession, mainly because unemployment remains fairly low at 3.5%. So that is also something that we're keeping an eye on and monitoring. We move on to page 14 and we look at the yield curve again, from where we were back in March to where we are currently as of August 1st. We can see that the yield curve did steepen. Again, these increases in interest rates do negatively impact bonds that were previously bought in the past. But one thing that it does do, it does give us the opportunity to capture higher yielding securities compared to what we've seen over the last 2 years. And I will talk about that in more detail. Another thing to keep in mind is that the yield curve has been inverted for quite some time, which is also another thing that people are monitoring to see whether or not that will signal that a recession could be happening down the road. We move on to page 15. The highlight here is that because of the recessionary fears, we are continuing to see consumer sentiment trend in a downward direction. So again, with the inverted yield curve, with the Fed being aggressive with rates and inflation, that does increase potentials of a possible recession down the road. So therefore, consumer sentiment is starting to trend downward. Now, when we look at the portfolio on page 16, this increase in rates has given us the opportunity to make purchases at very, very attractive rates. We were very, very busy in July, purchasing yields well above 3% for the most part in the portfolio, and some of even 4%. So the income generation in the portfolio will continue to increase as we're able to take maturing assets and reinvest them into higher yielding securities. Again, high quality bonds remains our focus, and then also to making sure that the city, which it does have, not the city, the district has enough liquid assets in Camp and Lafe to meet short-term obligations, and being well diversified when it comes to what we're investing in the general portfolio. That is all that I wanted to cover. If there are any questions, I will take those questions.
Well, I thank you for your presentation, and I'll look to my colleagues to see if there's any questions, comments, concerns, anything for Wale. I do have one thing. As you mentioned, the technical definition of a recession. I was just curious, what is there anything that automatically takes place when you hit the magic number of quarters required to technically be in a recession that the government, other than just describing it as now we're in a recessionary period?
Yeah, I don't think there's any like magic thing that happens when you get into a recession stage. I think what people tend to look at is, where is growth starting to contract? How does that affect unemployment? How does that affect, consumer demand and things like that? So right now, even though technically growth is slowing down, there are things like retail sales and then also unemployment that continue to be very, very low. So therefore, I think it's the Economic Bureau that usually labels things a recession. They have not come out and done that just yet. So they're the ones that are responsible for doing that. So to me, as long as unemployment remains low And the consumer consumption is a big part of GDP. As long as that trends in the right direction, I don't think they'll come out and label it a recession just yet.
Okay, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
This is Joe Wire. The economic board, they can go back and grab it the time. So let's say next quarter also comes in with some of these with negative growth, or maybe even the one after that. They could go back and pick up these, they can make a post grab at these data and call the whole thing a recession if we get worse later. So that's probably why they're waiting. They're not, they're academics, obviously, and they're not pushed to make a quick judgment that will require us to shade these years on all graphs going forward future. So they won't do that until they feel that it's not going to bounce its way out.
Gotcha. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? I think it goes once again, Wally, we're in some odd economic times as we straddle all these different aspects going forward. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the firm's work. Appreciate that. So that will conclude our discussion on this item. And before we take our vote, Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on item 3?
We have no speakers on this item.
Thank you very much. So I'll ask my colleagues for a motion on item 3 to accept the report.
Also move, Chairman.
Great, thank you. And can I get a second?
Second.
And Madam Secretary, can you roll call on that?
Thank you. Voting on item number 3 with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold, who's absent. Director Conroy is absent. Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosbol.
Aye.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Meston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie is absent. Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 13 ayes.
Great, thank you very much. That motion does pass. We're going to move on then to item 4A to authorize a budget increase in the fiscal year 22-23 bus division capital budget for project number 1717. That's the San Rafael Transportation Center relocation analysis, environmental clearance, and preliminary design. The staff report begins on page 25, and we just heard the presentation from was it Ray Santiago earlier this morning at the Building and Operating Committee meeting. If there are no further questions for staff, I would like to continue. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns from directors on item 4A? I am not seeing any hands raised, confirming that with our secretary.
That's correct. I don't see any hands raised.
So that would conclude discussion on this item. And before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on item 4A?
We have no speakers for this item.
Thank you then. With no further ado, can I get a motion to approve?
Move,
item
Mr.
4A?
Chairman.
So I have a motion and a second by.
Second by Parr.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, Madam Secretary, can you please do a roll call vote?
Thank you. Voting on item 4A, starting with Director Arnold, who's absent. Director Conroy is absent. Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosbol.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Maston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie is absent. Director Thier.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 13 ayes.
Great, thank you all very much. That motion does pass. We have no actions for item 5, so we'll move on to item number 6 to approve establishment of a new project, the Suicide Deterrent System Rescue Training Net project in the fiscal year 22-23 Bridge Division capital budget. The staff report starts on page 29, and Ava Bauer-Furbush will present this report. Ava, please begin your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The construction of the Golden Gate Bridge physical suicide deterrent system involves installation of a horizontal stainless steel net panels that are spread between and sewn onto the stainless steel border cables. The net panels are located approximately 20 feet below the bridge sidewalks and extend out about 20 feet. The border cables are attached to the existing bridge elements or to newly installed cantilever steel brackets. The effectiveness of suicide deterrent horizontal net system has been confirmed by drastic reduction of suicide attempts at facilities where such nets are installed. However, because there have been a few reported incidents of people jumping onto the nets despite a risk of injury, it is important to have a rescue plan for such incidents at the Golden Gate Bridge to prepare for a possibility that most likely a person most likely will sustain injury after jumping 20 feet down onto a considerably hard surface of the net that is built of 4mm stainless steel rods. Staff reach out to representatives from the Southern Marine Fire Department, the San Francisco Fire Department, the California Highway Patrol, and the United States Coast Guard to develop a coordinated bridge net rescue plan. The district and the Southern Marine Fire Department have agreed that a rescue training net should be constructed at the fire department's training tower in Mill Valley to participate the development of different rescue techniques and to aid in the training of rescue and law enforcement personnel. It was originally anticipated that the construction of the rescue training net would be procured through a contract change order to the Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent System construction contract, but attempts to negotiate contract change order prices with the contractor have failed. This necessitates that a separate new project called Rescue Training Net Project with project number 2321 be established in the fiscal year 22-23 Bridge Division capital budget to procure construction of the project by advertising its construction contract for construction bids. HNTB Corporation, the district's design consultant for the SDS project, has completed the design of the rescue training net to be installed on the training tower in Mill Valley. The district has obtained a right-of-way permit from the fire department. The contract is ready to be advertised, and we plan to advertise it in September. The construction time is estimated at about 9 months. Staff recommends that the Building and Operating Committee recommend to the Board of Directors that this project be added to the fiscal year 22-23 Bridge Division capital budget, with the budget of $824,000 to be 100% financed with the district's capital reserve. And with this, I'll be happy to answer any question that the committee may have for me.
Great, thank you, Ava. Are there any questions from the committee? I do see one hand raised, and that's Director Park. Go ahead.
I just have a question. Under the fiscal impact, or before that, don't you mean that the Finance and Auditing Committee recommended?
Yes,
The Building and
yes.
Operating Committee.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's all right, just for the record, in case
Yes.
someone looks.
Thank you for that catch. Director Thier.
I just wanted, are comments appropriate now or just the questions?
Go ahead.
Okay, great. I just wanted to talk about the importance of this program and making sure that we allow for training so that if the net is used, people, firefighters and law enforcement know how to proceed in assisting a person out of the net. So I wanted to again thank staff for this project and just to indicate my support.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else? If I do have a question regarding any kind of ongoing future costs. Do we have an annual, lack of a better word, lease agreement, access agreement, or anything with the fire district that we're going to be on the hook for once we build this facility at the training grounds?
Right now, they will assume the maintenance of the net. However, it may be necessary from time to time to perform some repairs, but I don't expect this to be any significant cost.
Great. Good to hear. Thank you for that. Again, anyone else have any questions or comments? Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this particular item?
We have no speakers for this item.
Well, with that, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion on item number 6, and I'll look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second by.
Second.
And with that, Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Thank you. We're voting on item number 6 with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold, who's absent. Director Conroy is absent. Director Garbarino.
Aye.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosball.
Aye.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Maston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie is absent. Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. 13 ayes.
Great. Thank you. That motion passes. So next on the agenda is item number 7, authorizing the execution of the 2022 amended and restated Clipper Memorandum of Understanding. Staff report begins on page 33. Jennifer Minucci will be presenting this item. Jennifer, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Rabbit and members of the Finance Committee. I'm here to discuss the action before you to approve an amendment to the Clipper MOU, which basically governs how the member agencies interact, what their roles are, what the Clipper program will support, and how costs are shared among operators. The main change in this updated MOU is the new cost sharing agreement that the member agencies who participate in the Clipper program in the Bay Area, how they get split among themselves. Technically, in the main change as we're going through this next generation Clipper system is we're going to an account-based system, similar to our basis of what we do in our tolling program. And that enables the cost sharing to be more ridership and usage based versus the current cost sharing, which is more based on number of transactions and number of cards that are issued in the Clipper system. The cost sharing agreement in this updated MOU has been heavily vetted and negotiated over a number of years as we've been designing this Clipper upgrade. And this MOU basically formalizes those years of work and how we pay among ourselves as agencies. From a financial perspective, it appears a district will bear similar cost sharing amounts to what we have today. Attached in the item is a PowerPoint that I'm happy to review, but it's basically there for background information. It describes that we're now 22 member agencies, how the Clipper program is supported and their roles as agencies, the vendor and MTC. It has some history about the Clipper MOU and some basic benefits that the next generation Clipper system, such as improving mobile ticketing functions and use of contactless credit cards. For those of you that may not have been around for the initial deployment of Clipper, then called TransLink, Golden Gate and AC Transit were actually the first 2 operators to commit and work with MTC to go live in the region in early 2007. And we were basically the live test for all the operators in the region. And from a personal note, as your original project manager on the initial rollout of the system, it's exciting to see the upgrades of the next generation Clipper system finally come to fruition and the growth of both member agencies and use of Clipper region-wide. Again, the action before you is just basically an MOU amendment formalizing the many years of work it's taken to complete us to get to this point and brings the cost sharing agreement into line with our upcoming change to an account-based system. This concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate that, and to share your excitement about the opportunities in front of us with the new Clipper system coming on board. I'll look to my colleagues for any questions on this particular item. Not seeing any.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment, please? Director
Yeah.
Hernandez.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge Jennifer's participation. As she mentioned, she was the project lead when we first rolled out the Clipper, and we were one of the first 2 agencies to do that. And just congratulate her and thank her and all of her team for the the work to get to this day in celebrating the next generation of Clipper and actually making a huge impact on the entire Bay Area transit system and how we handle payments. So thank you very much to Jennifer. Thanks for your report today, and please extend our thanks to your team. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Not seeing any, Madam Secretary. Is anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this item?
We do. We have one speaker on this item. Mr. Pilpel would like to speak on this item. David, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Excellent. David Pilpel. So several quick comments here. So I appreciate the work to update the Clipper MOU. I am interested in the new cost allocation model. I'm sorry, I've not been following the Clipper Executive Board. Silly me. Anyway, in the new cost allocation model, which agencies would be negatively impacted? The staff report indicated that the district would have minimal or no real impact by the change in cost allocation, but I assume that some agencies would be positively or negatively impacted. I'm wondering about that. Whether agency discretion over fare setting would be changed. I saw a troubling line in the staff report on page 2, item C, that other than promotional special event or limited audience, e.g. tourist fares, no new non-Clipper prepaid fare products shall be created without MTC approval. So that seems like somehow MTC is would have a veto over new fare instruments or fare changes that agencies might propose. That seems odd to me, but perhaps I'm misunderstanding that. I'm also wondering what can be done with cards that are blocked or have negative balances. I don't think we should have to recycle those physical cards. Agencies should have some way to restore them in the system, given the supply chain issues for production and other things. The idea was that these were supposed to be reusable cards, and if somebody goes negative on them, that shouldn't render them useless and subject to recycling. There should be some way to restore them. I hope the district sees revenue sooner and doesn't have higher costs to monitor and administer here. While I support more payment options, including mobile, we shouldn't forget people with limited or no access to technology and should continue to improve integration with websites and district signage. And finally, I believe the general manager, Jennifer, and other district staff have been heavily involved here, and I appreciate all of their good work on Clipper. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. I don't know, Jennifer, if you can talk about whose ox is being gored in this transition from, what is it, transaction-based to account-based accounting system?
I guess I would say, Dennis might want to log in, but I think in all, you got 22 agencies now. Everybody, really what we're doing is realigning the path. I think the exciting part about, and I would say our agency, because we do tolling, have experience in account-based, and we were very involved in the beginning to say, if you go to an account-based system, you just have better ways to slice who's doing things based on usage. And I think right now they call it card-based system, but it's not, it doesn't track in the same way. So now it's more what we would say based on usage. So it's evened out that the agencies are going to pay on usage, as opposed to how many members you have. We're all regional customers. We're not Golden Gate customers, AC Transit customers. So I think we've grown a lot in a decade and a half to figure out how to slice up and more appropriately have our cost sharing be evened out. I think because us as Golden Gate have a ferry system that is, that you tag it once and you already know the price, that we also have a distance-based system. So as we always say, we're often like a BART and a Muni, who are the big players in the region. And so because of that, our cost sharing kind of evens out, because what happens with one system evens out on the other inherently. I'm not sure if that's as eloquent, but I think that's what I would say is that everybody took a piece of the pie, and I haven't heard anybody, everyone's pretty happy. That's why we're here at the MOU finally. And in terms of, really being account-based too, that's the whole point with these cards and negative balance. You'll actually, the biggest improvement is you'll have real time. The whole point of account-based is right now you tap the card, you have to wait for all this 1990s technology to update the card so your balance is updated and you have money in your card, et cetera, et cetera. It's now real time. So that is the whole point of it. That's why you can use a contactless credit card, and you can load your balance seamlessly, and you can get a mobile wallet instantly. So having that flexibility, I think, really greatly enhances the customer's experience.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. And I can speak on the MTC issue. I think that at the end of the day, it's essentially administered. Clipper is everyone involved with that, and there are limitations still. The great thing about Clipper 2.0 is that there's much larger capacity. Not only that, as Jennifer mentioned, the account base, but much larger capacity for different fare structures. But there's still a limitation within that, and with all the different. Someone has to administer that contract going forward, so that's part of that. I do see Director Hill.
Could I answer one of the speaker's questions for him?
Oh, please go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, Jennifer did a fabulous job describing the fares and the account-based system. One of his questions was, does MTC somehow assume control over fare setting as part of this agreement? And the answer is no. What those words mean that he read is that we can't create a competitor to Clipper without MTC's okay, because the region's invested so much in this regional fare payment system. They don't want us all running off and doing our own thing with respect to how we collect money. But at this juncture, all of you, the Bridge Board, sets fares, and MTC does not at this juncture.
Perfect. Thank you, Dennis. Bert?
Yeah, this simplification and streamlining will have a huge effect in terms of productivity of commuters, people who come to the area in so many ways that will more than recover the costs and problems with coordination in doing this. And I just really salute Jennifer and the dozens of people like you who have worked together on getting this done. This is really amazing. It solves the one area that has worked so hard to do. The next one is schedules. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Jennifer, for all your work. And with that, we have taken public comment. I'll look for a motion to approve item number 7.
So move.
And a second by?
Second.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, Madam Secretary, can you please call a roll?
Thank you. We're voting on item number 7 with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold is absent. Director Conroy is absent. Director Garbarino. Director Garbarino is absent. Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosball.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Meston.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie is absent. Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 12 ayes.
Great. Thank you. That motion passes. So next on the agenda is item number 8 to authorize the execution of a professional services agreement pursuant to the request for proposals 2022 D009 external audit services with Eide Bailly LLP. The staff report starts on page 43, and Cody Smith will be presenting this report. Cody, go ahead.
Thanks,
Excuse
Dr.
me,
Rabbit.
Mr. Chair, may I say something before we commence the item?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Next item. Thank
Okay,
you. Sorry.
Cody, go ahead.
Director Rabbit and members of the Finance Committee, thank you for having me. We're going to jump in the very exciting world of external auditing. I know it's very hard to follow the Clipper item, but this is very riveting stuff. Currently, as you all may know, we have to get an external audit done every year. Our current contract expires after this year's audit. Actually, as I speak right now, our auditors are on site right now doing the financial statement audit. We have a single audit as well that we present to you guys after the new year. So it's due by March. This request is to approve another contract with Eide Bailly. We did a full RFP for external audit services. We had 20 people look at the RFP. We had 4 people actually submit proposals, and then 2 of those we interviewed. It was Mays and Associates and Ide Bailey. The reviewing team, we felt that both proposals were good. Ide Bailey stood out, one because of their transit experience, particularly related to just they are very big players in the current market. They do Caltrain, they do Samtrans, they do ACTC. So they're very experienced with transit, the needs of the transit agency. They also had very good knowledge over the unique reporting requirements, specifically the National Transit database NTD reporting that's due every October, and our state controller's office report. You may or may not know, we actually have to file 4 of these every year, and that's due every January. So they've been very helpful, not only with just some of their perspective and professional experience, but also with make sure we meet our deadlines. So that's been really helpful. Their pricing was very, very competitive. And so that also was a huge plus. So with that, I guess I'm recommending that we move forward with another contract with Ide Bailey. This is for 3 years plus 2 one-year options. So again, for a total of 5 years. So with that, I guess, any questions, please?
Great. Thank you very much, Cody. It took me about 3 years to pronounce the name of the firm correctly. So appreciate that. I do see Director Parr with her hand up. Go ahead, Director.
Yes, thank you. We currently have Ide Bailey, don't we?
We do, yes.
Do we have any policies, written or unwritten, about how many years we go with the same auditing firm before we make a switch? I mean, we've been happy with them, and I don't have any complaints. That's just a question.
So I believe we don't have any formal policy. The SEC and GFOA actually they don't require firm rotation, but they do require partner and team rotation within every 5 years. And that was relates to the I'm blanking on the name right now, but the Enron example where the partners were kind of getting in, for lack of a better term, getting in bed with the audit firm, and so they required that rotation. So you don't have to switch audit firms. You have to switch audit partners and the team. And Ide Bailey has done that. They actually had a new team in here the last 2 years, and so they were rotating partners throughout the tenure. So we anticipate they'll continue doing that, obviously required by law, and that's just how they, I think, operate normally.
Okay, thank you. It might be important when you come to us with the report that you make that statement in the beginning. Maybe you do and I just missed it, but the fact that they changed the team even though the firm is the same. Thank you, Cody, for your conscientiousness.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I am not seeing any. Madam Secretary, anyone from the public on this particular item?
We have no speakers on this item.
Well, then that would conclude our discussion. With that, I'll look to my colleagues for a motion to approve item number 8 for our external audit services.
So moved. I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. And Madam Secretary, can we please have a roll call vote?
Thank you. We're voting on item number 8 with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold, who's absent. Director Conroy is absent. Director Garbarino is absent. Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosball.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Aye.
Director Mattson.
Aye.
Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder. Director Snyder is not on. Director Stephanie is also absent. Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 11 ayes.
Thank you very much. That motion passes. So next on the agenda is item number 9 to approve actions relative to the renewal of vision, dental, life insurance, and employee assistance plans. That staff report starts on page 45. Kelly Hopper is here to present the report. Before we begin, I'm going to go to Director Hernandez. And you're muted, Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Apologies. And apologies for being premature. This is just a statement to, for the record, that I'll be recusing myself for this discussion. I will not participate in the vote based on my current employment with IBEW Local 6, which potentially could be affected by the decisions made during this this item. So I'll be recusing myself, and will depend on staff to let me know when it's time to come back in. Thank you and goodbye.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
Mr. Chair, Dick, I also had to recuse myself for similar reasons, so I will also get off. Thank you.
Okay, great. And
I got off a little early, but I have to recuse myself as well. Similar reasons.
All right. With that, I'll go back and ask Kelly Hopper for her presentation. Go ahead, Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Rabbit and members of the committee. We're actually looking for approval today for actions related to the renewal of our insurance programs, principally the self-insured insurance programs that we have for vision, dental, life insurance, as well as our employee assistance program that we have for the agency. This is a 6-month premium. The reason being is that we are trying to align ourselves with our CalPERS insurance year for the continuity and efficiencies of the administration of our program. So we would like to go to a January through December contract cycle that would be analogous to our CalPERS programs. So just as a little bit of a background, which many of you know, we have recently transitioned to our CalPERS medical program for the majority of our medical over the last 18 months or so. However, there are still 4 programs that the district self-contracts, and that's our dental program through Delta Dental, our vision program through VSP, our life insurance program, as well as our employee assistance program that we provide for our employees on an ad hoc basis. So as I mentioned, we want to go to a January through December. So we have the 6-month gap that we need approvals on moving forward. Again, we're recommending that the vision stay with VSP in the amount of about $145,000. Delta Dental is a 6-month cost of about $1.3 million. And then our life insurance policy at $44,000. And then finally, our Optum Health, which is the 6-month premium is $15,000. I do want to note a little bit about our Optum Health, just as for information. This program has been used, it seems to be a little more frequently by our employees, which we're very grateful for. We offer 8 confidential sessions for our employees if they want to take part on a variety of things, from financial assistance, elder care, mental health, counseling, crisis or critical event counseling. So we are seeing this program used, and we're very grateful for that. We have that available. Many employers only offer 3 sessions, but we're offering 8 sessions. And this group is also the ones that if we have a critical incident at the bridge or even on our property, we would call one of their medical experts to come in and assist us with some of the debrief or crisis management for our staff. So we're very grateful to have this benefit and on board for the district as well as for the staff. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. I'll look to my colleagues for any questions, comments, concerns. Not seeing any hands raised. I will ask Madam Secretary if there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak on this particular item.
Thank you. We have no speakers on this item.
Great. So that would conclude our discussion. And before we move on, again, we've asked for public comment. I apologize. And I'll look for a motion on item number 9.
So moved, Par.
Great.
Second, Giudice.
So we have a motion and a second. Before we take our vote, just thank you very much, Kelly, for all your work. Appreciate it very much. And with that, Madam Secretary, can we please have a roll call vote?
Thank you. Just so I can be clear on the vote in front of us right now, since the 3 directors, Grosboll, Hernandez, and Snyder, have left the room, we are actually a committee. We're not a committee of the whole. So I'm just going to roll call the committee members. So I just wanted to clarify that. So we're voting on item number 9 with a first and a second. So I'm starting with Director Cochran.
Yes.
Director Giudice.
Yes.
Director Grosboll is absent. Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston.
Aye.
Vice Chair Parr.
Aye.
Chair Rabbit.
Aye.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 6 ayes.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much. And we'll let everyone know that they can come back in.
I am bringing back Director Grosbull. Director Grosbull is back, and I believe Kim is going to alert Director Snyder and Hernandez to return.
I've texted them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll slow walk a little bit here to make sure that everyone comes back, but that motion does pass, and we'll move the agenda item on to number 10, which is the status report on the fiscal year 22-23 budget. That report begins on page 53 of your packet, and Joe Wire is going to be presenting. So Joe, want to go ahead?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman, and to the rest of the committee and board. This is your status report, which we implemented back in the beginning of the COVID situation. And its goal is to make sure that the district and the board and public are aware of the district's budget shortfall and what they're doing about it in order to close that budget shortfall. So that has been completed through the first 2 years, and now we're looking at year 3. This report itself is going to come out monthly, and this is the very first month, so it's not chock full of information yet. It will be so as we go through the 12 months of the year.
Has there been amended drafted?
Somebody's needs to be on mute. Thank you. If we could just turn to page 55 in your report, that's the actual table that we use. It's pretty simple. As I said, this is just the first month. If you see on the top right-hand corner of the table is that column that's on the far right is the cumulative change. And we start out at the very top with the deficit that was in the approved budget that the board passed in June of this year. It was approximately $75 million. And that's why you see it's a negative number is in the deficit. And then we'll have rows. We've just have 3 now that they will, I think at the end of last year, we had 10 or 12 of different changes that were made in order for that budget to be balanced. Because the district has been fortunate and was fortunate to receive the emergency federal one-time funding, we are using that emergency federal one-time funding to fund the deficit in transit revenue, and this will pay for a transit expense. In this case, we're using parts of the second tranche of ARP and parts of the third tranche of ARP, and those numbers are listed in item 1 in row 1 and row 2. They bring this deficit down to almost nothing, and the remainder is row 3, which is something we update every month, and that is the difference between what actual revenues were for bridge, bus, and ferry compared to what we assume they would be in the budget. And in this case, the difference is actually positive by $650,000. And that is made up, as you can see, of 3A, B, and C. First tolls, then bus fares, then ferry fares. Right now, bus and ferry fares are above what we projected, and tolls are slightly below what we projected. And that comes to the $650,000. As you see on the very bottom right-hand corner is the 0, which means that these various changes, the use of federal one-time funding, and the slightly better than expected earnings has produced a balanced budget. Following this particular table, there's some more pages. They have the actual data by month for those bridge, bus, and ferry comparisons to budget. And then after that is a table that compares the last 5 years where we've had before COVID and during the COVID time period. And it points out the real importance of the federal one-time funding and meeting the funding needs of the district's transit divisions. But with that, I'm finished and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Joe. I'll look to my colleagues. Any questions of Joe on the financial report? I am not seeing any hands raised. I'll ask Madam Secretary if there's anyone from the public who has any questions.
We do have one speaker on this item. It's Mr. Pilpel. And Mr. Pilpel, are you still with us?
I am. Last time today. David Pilpel again. So as usual, great work managing the budget. It looks to me like the fiscal cliff is now in late 2023 or later, depending on next year's budget and the deficit and how long the third tranche can be stretched out. I still think and will repeat this till I'm blue in the face, that a new strategic financial plan is needed. And given that at least 18-month time frame between now and then, I think that's enough time to develop, debate, and adopt a new strategic financial plan and deal with the reality that's going to hit, that there isn't going to be federal bailout money forever, and right-sizing the district and raising revenues and cutting expenses and reorganizing may well be in order. And I hope that there's the time to do that thoughtfully. And then just for my final comment for today, perhaps we'll hear more about it tomorrow, but it looks like President Ferry got into some kind of an incident, and I hope that he is better. It's slightly painful to see him on the screen, and I assume that he's in some amount of pain, and I hope that he's okay. Those are my thoughts, and thanks for listening today.
Thank you, David. Anyone else, Madam Secretary? No?
We have no other speakers.
All right, back up. I'll bring it back to the board. We obviously share the concerns over our president's health and well-being, and wish him the best. And with that, I will ask that will conclude our discussion on this particular item. And this is just a report, so there's no action required for item 10. And we'll move on then to item number 11. We have the monthly review of Golden Gate Bridge traffic tolls, bus and ferry transit patronage fares. That's found on page 63, and Joe will also present this item, as well as 12A, which is the monthly statement of revenue and expenses. That's on page 71, and 12B, that's the monthly statement of capital programs and expenditures, and that's on page 81. So Joe, go ahead.
Thanks again to the chair and to the committee and board members. Yes, we are going to take a look at the patronage and then at the financial reports. I'll run through the three of them, and then, happy to answer questions at the end, but if you have something in the middle, just please speak up. So as mentioned on page 63 is the beginning of our report on patronage. If we could take a look down to page 65, you'll see the graphs that we've been showing you over the last couple of years. And I think it is worth taking a quick look at those of where we are. I think at this time, I'll just point out the first graph that appears on page 65 is bridge traffic. And what I think I'd like to point out there is the yellow line is this year, 2022. And you can see it's overlapping over the last couple of months, the green line from 2021. And I think that's important to show that it's not going down, which is good, but also to show that it's not going up, which I think is important for us to do. That we're not saying, we don't know if we're in a steady state. Of course, we don't know, because we don't know the future. But on the other hand, this graph is telling you that it's not much different than it was before. We had a nice bump in 2021 that brought the summer traffic up. We're getting a little less of that this year. As you can see, the yellow line's a little flatter. So we'll see if the yellow line can stay above the green line as we go into the future, into the rest of this year. But it does, as you see, seem pretty steady. The next graph down, is just to point out the difference, is revenue. And there, the yellow line is above the green line. And that's part of that is to do with the fact that the price of the toll has gone up. So we may have a similar amount of traffic, but of course we get a slightly higher price by that inflationary increase that was in the toll plan. And that's important to do that. You can see also that the yellow line is bordering the blue in several occasions. And that's important to understand, is that that reflects pricing from 4 years ago now. So that the traffic was greater, as you can see in the graph above, 4 years ago, the traffic number, but the price that each of those people paid was less. And so that's why our revenue seems similar to them, but it's still, we're getting that similar revenue on fewer patrons because of the higher price. And that's why those two graphs look like that. Quickly, on the end of the page is bus ridership. You can see it's still approximately 40% of where it used to be. That also, the next one on page 66 keeps revenue down in that same ballpark, although the fare price has gone up, not this last year, but previous years to that. Ferry, I think Dennis pointed out earlier in one of your earlier board meetings today, we have seen a significant rise in ridership. That's the middle graph on page 66. You can see that line, the yellow line, which is 2022, is gradually going upward at a nice rate. And that has put ferry ridership closer to 50% of where it used to be. Revenues also have gone up because of that, and that's to do with both the ridership growing and the higher price that we had, although, as I mentioned, there was not a fare increase this year. And we page the remainder of the graphs you have in this particular report item compare budget to actual for this particular year and going back over a 12-month period. But if we could skip ahead to page 71 for your financial report. And this is the monthly financial report. It shows the data in detail, line item detail for the consolidated district, but also and each page for the 4 divisions, bridge, bus, and ferry, and the district division, and then your financial statement at the end. We'll just stick to the front page. And what the front page is showing you is the first line in that table in the middle of the page is showing that the consolidated district revenues have grown. These are without, the federal one-time funding. This year from last year. Last year is the column on the left. This year is the column on the right. The one in the middle is the budget. So they've grown. It's primarily due to slightly higher tolls, considerably higher fare revenue than what we had 12 months ago, and also primarily it's an accounting correction in income on our investments. And that has to do with the, I think Wale mentioned to you earlier, we've had some pretty large swings in interest rates, and that has changed the value of our investments. And so we have to mark those, and it causes pretty wild swings at times in our investment returns on paper, not in real life, because changes in bond pricing doesn't affect the amount of money the district gets unless they sell those bonds, which we don't tend to because we're a buy and hold. We're going for the yield returns, and those have gone up relatively steadily. So you can see it goes from about 15 million to 19 million in revenues on that first row. The second row, consolidated expenses are roughly similar. However, I would call it, not jump to too many conclusions. There's likely that on paper, again, they look similar, 14 million to 14 million, but there are a number of accounting adjustments that are made in the first month of the fiscal year. And those accounting adjustments tend to hide expenses. So actual expenses likely were slightly larger than that. And those kind of work themselves out over the next couple of months. It's one of the drawbacks of looking at data in a short time frame, which we are in this monthly. But overall, it's positive that revenues have been up, and we expect the month to have been positive when the accounting adjustments shake out over the next couple of months, and we'll draw your attention to that as we move through that. I will not spend too much time on page 81, which is your capital. In fact, I'm not going to turn there myself. We've had very small in the first month capital expenditures. As you know, those are recorded as they come in, and it just happened to be this particular month, the first month of the fiscal year, there wasn't a significant amount of those coming in. So it looks like we've had just a small, in this case, it comes up to 1% of budget expenditures. Not to be surprised, and we will obviously be tracking that monthly, and we'll get back to it as we go through the fiscal year. With that, closes out the discussion on those 3 board items, but I'm happy to have any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. I'll look to my colleagues. Any questions, those items presented? I don't really have a question, just a comment as I was looking at the revenue charts. Of course, now that we're 3 years out from what we considered normal pre-pandemic, it'd be interesting, especially with the inflation now at somewhere, 8%, a little over 8%, what the total CPI was since then. Because even though sometimes those lines really need to be projected further up in the chart in order to keep up with the ongoing costs, and at some point, I don't know how we note that on that, other than just to kind of keep it in the back of our minds that just because we're meeting a 2019 revenue doesn't mean that our own costs haven't gone up by a certain percentage since then, and we can still be on the other side of that line. I didn't say that very well, but I think you all know what I mean.
Thank you for bringing it up, Director Rabbit. I think that the district has the history of producing its 5 and 10-year projections, which we did not do the last couple of years because of the COVID pandemic made them, really not worth the work. They would be very useless projecting what was going to happen, considering the pandemic's enormous impact it had on our revenues. However, we're at a point now where we think it's need to do so. We're working on that now. We hope to get you that at your September board meeting. In that, we will talk a little bit about what you're referring to. In other words, what's happened to what we think is happening to our cost structure, and how if you assumed we had grown revenues from 2019, would that have even met these extra costs, or are they even greater than that? There's some conventional wisdom I'm reading about that most people think they are. In other words, costs have gone up more than even some sort of projected increase in revenues would have met, which sort of says that even if the pandemic hadn't happened, no, you can't do that. But anyway, it basically says that we would be having very difficult discussions right now, regardless. Even if our ridership had gone back to pre-pandemic levels, let's assume that if it had gone back to pre-pandemic levels, we still think we'd be having some pretty difficult discussions right now to balance the books, just because costs have gone up by so much. And that's we'll get at that sort of projection. That also after the projection, that's clearly is the board's been talking about financial planning, and we will need to be doing that coming in the next year for determining how to deal with the situation when the one-time funding does eventually run out. And we have time for that, as we've mentioned to you before. We're not rushed. The one-time funding is going to last us for at least a year and a half beyond now, as long as we keep this pattern of spending that we've been doing, where, as Dennis mentioned during the transportation meeting, that we put out service when our people need it. And so that keeps us keeping the costs at a level that allows the one-time funding to last for a longer period of time. It'll give us more time to plan for the future. I hope that answered some of your question.
It does, and I appreciate that information as well. Thank you, Joe. Again, looking to my colleagues, not seeing any hands raised. I'll ask Madam Secretary if there's anyone from the public with their hand up.
I think she said the last item, that was the last public comment.
Okay, I'll take that as a no, then we'll continue on. That concludes the discussion. No actions are required for these items, but we'll move on then to item number 13 on the agenda, which is our closed session. Before we do that, I want to thank everyone for their patience during our meetings today. We'll be leaving the video meeting for the duration of our closed session item and return after closed session. Members of the public who wish to stay on the audio line or live stream may do so until our return. And our attorney, Kim Manolius, will now take us into closed session. Kim, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Rabbit. At this time, the committee will go into closed session for a conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Government Code 54956.9A, for the 4 matters listed on the agenda. I won't read them all. Thanks.
Right, you all have the number to get into closed session.
Yes, I'm just going to remind the directors and staff to mute their microphones on their computers and turn off cameras. And we'd like you to call into the number provided for the closed session report. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
It says you've stopped, Amarette. Is that true?
See how good this microphone. I take it away from
You muted, Amarette.
Actually, I don't think I'm muted. It's just this microphone is just so good. It only picks up if it's right next to my mouth. Okay.
Emirate, I have to leave. My occupational therapist has just arrived, so I'm.
Okay, thank you. I am looking to see all of our directors have returned. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Be well, Mike.
There we go. Okay, so we can return back from the closed session. We're back in open session.
Great, very thank you. And Kim, can you provide a session report, please?
Of course, Chair Rabbit, thanks very much. The committee met in closed session as noted on the agenda for the 4 cases listed on the agenda and provided its negotiator with appropriate guidance on how to handle the cases.
Great, thank you very much. And our last item of the day, is there any public comment under item 14, Madam Secretary?
We have no speakers under public comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we've reached the end of our agenda. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved. How about second?
We have a motion, a second. Hearing no objections, it concludes the meeting of the Finance Auditing Committee. Thank you, everyone, very much. Most of all, thank you to staff for all the great work. The time is 12:06 p.m. and